Hello guys, welcome back onto the channel. Earlier this week, Microsoft held their Inside Xbox show, and in a surprising move, Turn 10 Studios announced a bunch of upcoming features to Forza Motorsport 7. One of them got me really excited, but I like to talk about the other ones first, so I'm gonna leave that one for later in the video. So let's start out by talking about the expansion of the Car Pass. The Car Pass is a $50 piece of DLC that's been available I think since Forza Motorsport 5, and it gives you access to 6 car packs that are usually released over the course of 6 months after the game is out. And the last car pack in the Car Pass of Forza Motorsport 7 was released last month. So usually after that they start releasing a bunch of separate car packs that you need to buy separately, regardless of whether you own the Car Pass or not. And they announced that they're going to be expanding the Car Pass with 2 additional car packs that they're going to be releasing in the near future for all Car Pass owners. So that's really great news because it adds value to the Car Pass. I've always felt that the Car Pass in Forza Motorsport was a little bit overpriced. It costs almost as much as a brand new game, and I don't think it's justified by the amount of content that they give in the Car Pass anyways, but that's great news because it adds value to the Car Pass after all. Now, if you own the Car Pass and you didn't pre-order the game, you'll be able to get your hands onto the pre-order exclusive Hoonigan Car Pack. So that's also another great news because that's one extra car pack that you're gonna get in case you didn't pre-order the game. I pre-ordered mine, so I already have this car pack. But for people who didn't pre-order, there's your chance to get your hands into this car pack. Now, let's move on to the next piece of news, and now let's talk about Time Attack. Time Attack is back as a multi-class, multi-ribbon rivals. I don't know what the extent of this mode is gonna be. They briefly mentioned that this is gonna be that this is gonna add leaderboards on a per car basis, which is kind of reminds me of what Drive Club did. In case you haven't played Drive Club, basically what it did is add leaderboards for separate cars, for separate track conditions, and for separate tracks. So let's say, for example, let's use Forza Motorsport as an example. Let's say you did a race around the Prague circuit, the full circuit, in a Porsche 911. The leaderboard is going to be tied to that car in specific, in that track in specific. So it's not gonna, currently as it is, that's what happens. So if you drive in a track and you set a time, let's say with a Porsche 911, and there's a faster car, the faster car is going to dominate the leaderboards, and you're not going to have a chance to kind of compete against other people who are using the exact same car as you were when you set the time. So if they do eventually implement the leaderboards the way that I interpreted it when Brian Eckberg talked about the feature in the show, then I think it's gonna be a very welcome addition, and it's gonna add a whole nother layer of competition within the game, because it's gonna kind of limit the car choice if you want to compete in certain types of leaderboards, because it's going to be tied up to on a per car basis, per track basis. Let's see how they implement this. And another thing that they also talked about in the show is experimental drag. So they're basically revamping the drag racing in the game. I'm not a drag racing kind of guy, but that's something that they are reworking, so I guess that's something that's gonna be really welcome to people who are into drag racing. And for now it'll be available in the free play only, so that's not gonna be something that's gonna be implemented in the multiplayer right away. That's something that they're planning on doing, and the reason why they are making it available in free play is to use it as a way to gauge interest in the community and to also get feedback. So if the interest is high enough, they're gonna bring this over to the multiplayer mode. So I think it's a fair way to test out a new feature like this. The new system is gonna make going from one drag race to another way faster than it currently is. Basically how it is right now is you do a bunch of heats in the drag racing, and once it's over, you're gonna be brought back into the lobby, and you're gonna have to reload the track all over again So it takes a little bit of time. The loading times in Forza Motorsport 7 are notoriously bad, so I think it's a nice way to kind of speed things up, especially so because drag racing it takes just a couple seconds to finish, so it doesn't justify you having to wait minutes in order to have a couple seconds worth of racing. And they're also gonna be adding the Christmas tree start light. They're also gonna be allowing you to spin your tires before you start, and they're also gonna add a lot of drag related stats like speed, reaction time, 6 feet time, and a bunch of other stats that they haven't mentioned yet at the end of every run. So it's gonna be making it very easy for you to kind of take a look at your performance and maybe compare against other players. I don't know if they're gonna make it possible for you to compare your performance against the people that you raced against, but if they do that, I think that's gonna be something really nice. They also briefly talked about a revamped drift mode, and they didn't talk a whole lot about it. The only thing that they mentioned is that they are reworking the scoring system. I don't know to what extent, but they said that they're making the drifting system a little bit more fun for players who are into drifting in Forza Motorsport 7. Now let's move on to the biggest piece of news straight out of that show. Forza Motorsport 7 is finally gonna have a regulation system. The system is still in development, it's going to be rolled out in several stages, and it's designed to deal with griffers and also as a teaching tool. So the way that they're gonna do that is they have reworked, actually they created a new system that's gonna identify the track limits on each and every track in the game. So they did it manually, they set the track limits manually in each and every track in the game, and they're gonna be using that as a way to teach drivers how to explore the limits of the track that you're racing on. So this new system is gonna give you the option to add an illuminated marker on the track edges, so that's gonna give you a color-coded warning based on how close to the edge you are. So that's a really nice teaching tool. I don't see a whole lot of people using that system in online lobbies. I think it might be a little bit distracting, especially so when you consider how chaotic racing is in Forza Motorsport games. So I think a lot of people are gonna be turning that option off, but it's a nice thing to have when you're kind of driving all by yourself, trying to learn the limits of the track, and it's especially useful when you're competing in Forza RC, for example, because it's gonna tell you how much you can push in each and every track without dirtying your lap. Now, what I'm gonna talk about from this point onwards is based on speculation on my part. That's no info that Turn 10 Studio gave out, or they didn't mention anything at all in this regard, but I like to speculate a little bit about how they could implement the penalty system in the game. It's no secret to anybody that I'm more of a Forza guy than a Gran Turismo guy. I appreciate both games. I've been playing both games for as long as I can remember. Gran Turismo, of course, I've been playing for longer because this is an older franchise. And there are aspects in Gran Turismo that I find way better than Forza and vice versa. But if there's one thing that Forza could definitely learn from Gran Turismo, specifically GT Sport, is how to implement a nice penalty system. A lot of people complain about the penalty system in GT Sport. They say that it's unfair, that it's broken, that they need to work. And I do agree to that to some extent, but you need to keep in mind that no other game has tried a penalty system in console racing to the extent that GT Sport did. And you need to give Polyphony Digital credit for trying and for constantly tweaking the system to try to perfect it. And of course, no game is perfect, but I think GT Sport is the game that came the closest to perfection when it comes to how to handle griffers in online racing. So I think Forza Motorsport could learn a lesson or two or more from GT Sport. And one of the things that I think that Turn 10 Studios could use to implement the system in Forza Motorsport is online racing based on skill level and in your driver rating level. There is already a system in place, a similar one like this in Forza Motorsport 7. So if you play the leagues mode, you know that the racing in that mode is tiered. So you start out in the lowest tier available in the game, and you have basically, I think, five levels within that tier, and the more you race, the more points you get. You're gonna accumulate, and once you reach a certain threshold, you're gonna be bumped up to a higher tier. So when you're on a certain tier, you're gonna be matched up against people in the same tier, and the way that you're gonna get points in this league mode is based on how fast you are and how skilled the players that you're racing against are. So if you beat players that are underskilled, you're not gonna get as many points as you would if you manage to beat someone at a higher skill level. So that's the way that the league system works. So I think if they find a way to bring it over to the multiplayer, to the open lobbies, and make it so that it's gonna match you up against people who are in the same tier as you, I think it's a step in the right direction. And another thing that I think that they should implement in this race regulation system is time penalties that need to be run out, that need to be run off while you're on the track. I remember that they mentioned, I don't remember exactly at which event, but they mentioned, I think one year ago when they were talking about the announcement of Forza Motorsport 7, they briefly talked about the possibility of adding a time penalty on top of your final lap time. I think that's no good, because usually griffers, they don't care about whether they lose or not. They're just in it to screw people over, to run people off track, and they don't care about whether or not they have a time penalty on top of their total time. So I think it's useless. But if they use the penalty system, the time penalty system, in the same way that GT Sport does, where if you get a time penalty while you're racing, you need to run that out before you cross the finish line. Otherwise, if you reach past a certain threshold, the time penalty is gonna keep adding up and adding up and adding up, and up until the point you're gonna get kicked out of the race. So I think that's a good way that they could implement the race regulation system in Forza Motorsport 7. Another thing that they could add as well is ghosting. And please, for the love of God, ghost out back markers. I don't know why they haven't implemented it yet in Forza Motorsport. And back markers are a huge part of the griefing problem in Forza Motorsport games. As a matter of fact, it's a huge problem in any racing game, but I find that Forza Motorsport is a very particularly bad case of griefers all around. And one of the things that I noticed myself, both by playing it and also by watching other people's videos, is that usually back markers, they're not back markers because they want to be back markers. Usually back markers, they intentionally drive slow around the track, just waiting for the perfect opportunity to screw the guy in first place once it's coming across him. So I think ghosting back markers out would be a huge step in the right direction in dealing with griefers, because I don't think we would have a lot of back markers that way. A lot of people would just give up from the get-go without even trying to screw people up. And I think it would be awesome. So if they implement those features, all the features that I just mentioned, which is basically what GT Sport already does, and bring it over to Forza Motorsport, I think it's gonna improve the quality of the online racing a lot, and I can see myself playing Forza Motorsport online a whole lot more if the race regulations work out to be a great thing. Of course, it remains to be seen to what extent Turn 10 Studios are gonna implement the race regulation system. They didn't talk specifics about that. They didn't talk about how they're gonna penalize griffers or if they're gonna penalize griffers at all. They haven't talked about time penalties. They haven't talked about ghosting. So all of these remain to be seen, and I'm kind of curious to see what they're gonna, how they're gonna implement the system in the game. So these were the main talking points in the event. Of course, they talked very briefly. Most of these details you can find at the official website. There's a lot more details there, and I don't know, I think the only thing that we can do right now is wait for the next few months for more news, more details in regards to how the race regulation system is gonna work in Forza Motorsport 7. But I'm really excited to get back into Forza Motorsport 7 online racing. One of the biggest reasons why I don't bring a lot of Forza Motorsport 7 videos to the channel is because it's pretty damn difficult to get quality racing in that game. Most of the racing involves you getting screwed up on the very first turn, and from that moment on, your content is completely ruined. So that's one of the reasons why I don't bring a lot of videos on Forza Motorsport 7 to the channel, even though I play the game a lot. But anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it informative. If you did like the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more Forza Motorsport 7 content, share the video with your friends and on your social media. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, the links are in the description down below, and I hope to see you guys on the next one. Bye.